most welcome to this video, and in this video we are basically going to be handling the terms and concepts that we shall encounter as we are dealing with web designing. This time round, these are a little advanced terms. In one of my videos we have already looked at some of the other terms, the web browsers, the search engines, etc. So today I'm going to talk about a few. One, I'm going to talk about these three terms called hosting and domain, then and designing, and I tell you the difference. So now I simply want to just explain this, then I dive into the terms that I basically want to discuss. Number one is the concept of domain. A domain is basically a name that a company chooses to use. That is in an easy way to understand. A name that a company chooses to use. For example, if I have my company, maybe bread sellers company. If I want to buy a domain, I may choose to use www.breadsellers.com. So bread sellers in that concept becomes my domain. Now, whenever you're a new person or whenever you're just starting a website, first time to have a website for that company, you must buy a domain. You must go and buy that domain. So that is basically how it appears. You must always buy a domain that you want to use. So now, for example, I have a company, Lorry Computer Center. I have this Lorry Computer Center. So when I have Lorry Computer Center, basically my domain will be lorrycc.com. It is the one I use. Lorry Computer Center, I use a domain of lorrycc.com. That is simply the domain I use. So that is just the concept of domain. Now when it comes to hosting, whenever I'm designing my website, we shall see these when we move into the advanced concepts later. But whenever I'm designing a website, I design it from a one machine. Okay, if I choose to use GitHub, I can design from any other machine or other collaborative tools. I can choose to design from any other machine and access the files anywhere that I want. But still, it is not on my domain. So this is what I do. When I'm designing a site, I'll create my files in my, for example, I may be having this. I may create my files here in a Notepad or in a Visual Studio Code and any other program that I may be using to design. So after designing, this website at the moment can only be accessed when I'm basically dealing with that computer, when I'm sitting on that computer and using it. That is basically when or where I can access my files from. However, in the concept of hosting, it is where you start with buying space, online space or cloud space. You link your domain to that space that you have bought online. This is all in the price of hosting. You link that online space or cloud space that you have bought to the domain that you paid for first. Then on that cloud space, you copy all the web files that you have designed, all the files that make up your website. For example, all these files that make up my website, I copy all of them and I put them onto that cloud space. After putting them onto that cloud space, that way whenever someone tries to search for my domain, the other files that make up my website will be displayed. That is basically how hosting and domain work. Then simply designing is where designing is a very broad term. Sometimes for some websites it involves even designing some graphics. Some other times it involves designing logos. Some other times you sit and design how a website should display, how such a page should display that is there. Then designing also goes ahead into writing code. Designing goes ahead into doing the prototypes, into doing the prototypes and doing the pseudocodes and whatever. All that is part of designing. So designing is actually a broad term that we see here. But basically in our concept, I'll say designing is where you write the code and put each and every other thing that you want to come up with your site. Each and every other code that I write to come up with this website fully operational and doing whatever I want it to do. That whole process is what we basically call designing. So I'll immediately dive into other terms. For example, I have a term here called HTML. This is a term that I may have talked about in one of my previous videos, but I'll repeat. HTML is basically a hypertext markup language, and it is just a standard language used to structure or to create the structure of web pages. One thing you should always note is that HTML is a structuring language. It's like when you're building a house, you lay the foundation, and it is the foundation that tells you that I'm going to have this sitting room, I am going to have this bedroom, I am going to have this other thing. All that is part of the foundation. So HTML is actually the one that does our foundation. It is one that creates the structure for us. Here I have an example of a code. H1, welcome to my website. H1 is for heading 1, we shall see. P is for paragraph, we shall also see that. So basically that is HTML, a structuring language. Every web developer must know HTML, because what are you going to design if you don't know HTML? Which house are you going to build if you don't know how to build a foundation for that house? So that is basically number one. Then I'm trying to explain this because they are the basic languages that we shall use when designing websites. Then we have CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and we are saying this is basically a language that we use to style HTML elements. In one of my previous videos, I said that HTML tags are the building blocks of HTML elements. That is what I said. So we said, I don't want to go back to that. We looked at the tags and how to open them and to close them. Then we also looked at the HTML elements, and we are saying HTML elements, these are basically the blocks that we deal with in our website. The different sections, the tables, the images, the videos, the audios, those are the HTML elements. So we are saying some of the styles we give using CSS are colors, we can give fonts, we can change the layout, and in my example I show you basically a syntax, or I show you how we can simply write an HTML code, a CSS code. If you're really dealing with CSS, this is basically how you can write it. For example, here I may be styling a paragraph. So I open a paragraph here, I write P, then I open my CSS. Here is when I'm writing totally a CSS file. I'll open my curly brackets, I believe. Then you put all the other elements. You put the style here that I want to give a color. The color is blue. I want to give a font size. The font size is 16. So you simply, every time you finish the style name, for example here the style name is font size, you put a full colon, you put the value that you want to give to that style, then you close, you terminate. In most programming languages this is called the terminator, the semicolon or the semicolon. So basically that is CSS, a language that we use to style. One thing you should note, HTML used for styling, HTML used for structuring, CSS used for styling. Then our language number 3 is JavaScript, and we are saying JavaScript is simply a scripting language used to add interactivity to web pages. For example, alert hello visitor. For example, when I'm designing maybe a website and I put a form, and I want this form to display an error message of maybe success after someone has filled the entire form and submitted, and I want the website to display success, your form has been received successfully. I must add some JavaScript somewhere, because it is one that will add that interactivity to tell the people that yeah, success, your website, not to show the back end codes. I don't know, I believe this is so early to bring in the back end codes, but there are sometimes we may not want to show the PHP and MySQL codes or MySQL errors in the browser, but rather we want to display errors that a user can understand, not to display the other. There is an error on line 31 what. No, we don't want to display those, but we want to display an error that someone can understand. For example, they are filling the form, they have skipped somewhere, they have not put maybe their form or the email they have used is already existing. We would love to put JavaScript somewhere such that when someone says submit, it will display an error saying an error has occurred. The email you have used is already existing in the database. Yeah, so basically that is what we have with JavaScript. Then we have this concept of responsive design. Here we are saying responsive design basically means designing websites to look good on all devices, i.e. on the phones, tablets and PCs. We usually have three displays when we are designing websites. We have the desktop mode, we have the tablet mode, and we have the mobile view or the mobile mode. So here, when we are designing or when we are doing responsive designs, your website should display almost similarly on all the three devices. And you realize that a mobile view is the smallest, tablet is the medium, and then PC or desktop view is the biggest. So as you design your objects, you must make sure your website is so responsive, because this website will receive visitors that are using phones, it will receive visitors that are using tablets, it will receive visitors that are using desktops or laptops or whatever, computers. So if at any time your display is different across the devices, it means one of the viewers using a different device might have a bad experience with your website. The images have moved, then the images are covering the words somewhere, then the menu is not clickable. So you must make sure you put that into account. You must always remember that my website has to be responsive whenever I am designing. So we use CSS media queries when we are trying to do responsive designs. This is the easiest method of doing responsive stuff. For example, here I was doing for devices that have a maximum width of 600 pixels. So that is basically what we have. Then we have web hosting. This one I've talked about it, and we are saying it is just a service that allows individuals to post a website on the internet such that it can be easily accessed across any device all around the world. Name of some web hosting companies: we have Namecheap, we have Bluehost, or free hosting like GitHub Pages. Then we also have the HostGators and whatever, all those are hosting companies. Then when we come to domain name, I've also talked about it. We are saying this is the address used to access a website. But whenever you want to access a website, it is the one you will use. Like I told you, it is the name of a company. For example, if you want to, the name of a company, we usually use it as the one we use to address these, to access their websites. It is very absurd if your company is called Bread Makers and then you use the domain of truck drivers. Lorry Bread Makers as a company uses the lorry truck drivers as their website. So that is why I was saying it is basically the name of the company, but it is simply an address. When you add on the www.what.com, it simply gives you the address that you use to access that website. Then you have the URL. We are saying this is basically a full web address used to locate a resource online. Here it may not be so much important at the moment, but because most of them use HTTPs ://, www. Maybe example. But why is a URL very good? Because it allows you to access a specific resource on your website. We shall see that when we start designing websites, we shall have different folders containing different items. For example, the contact.html can be a page on one, like in my folder. So when I say https www.example.com/contact.html, it simply means I'm specifically targeting that contact.html. If I'd stopped here, just stopped here where there is example.com, when I press OK, the computer or my search engine is simply going to look for the index file in my whole folder of example.com. It is going to look for the index page and displays that. But if I come and I add that, it means it won't only look for the index file, it won't actually look for the index file, but it is going to look for contact.html and display that. Yeah. Maybe one thing that I forgot to mention is that HTML pages are saved with an extension of .html. That is why you're seeing contact.html. It means .html is just the file extension, and I can easily use it. It means this is directly a web browser, a web page. So this page contact.html can be properly displayed in a web browser. Yeah, it is a page. Then search engine optimization is yet another term, but it is just a technique used to make websites appear higher in search engine results. Yeah, so sometimes we use search properties as title, keywords, and meta tags. We shall talk about this later as we progress in our concept. The UX for user experience. This is how a user feels when interacting with the website. They either feels easy, they either feel it smooth, or they feel it frustrating, or they find your website frustrating. So a clean and easy to navigate website gives you a better user experience. If your website is very easy to navigate, it means you'll have a better user experience. Then we have user interface. You'll encounter those terms when you talk to senior developers. You'll encounter terms like UX, UI. So UX is user experience, UI is user interface. And you're saying user interface is basically the visual elements of the website, the buttons, the icons, and whatever. So Bootstrap provides ready-made UI components. I'll later in my course I'll show you how you can now get some templates of already designed concepts depending on what you want. You edit and you go ahead. Then the front end, this one I already talked about it, but I'll repeat. We are saying front end is just the part of the website that users see, that interacts with the users. An example I'm giving: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We said HTML is the structure, then CSS does the styling, then JavaScript does the interactivity. So that is what the user interacts with. That when a user is working on a website, they will see the HTML structures of a page, then they will see the CSS, the styles, and then they will see the JavaScript that gives them the interactivity. Then, for example, I'm saying a login form that is displayed in the browser. And then we have a back end. We are saying this is the server-side code that processes data and runs in the background. Examples of these languages that can write this, we have PHP, Node.js, Python, Django. For example, when I have a login page on the front, the user only sees that login page. They enter their data there and click on the submit button. That is front end. Then, deep down or behind my form that the user sees, I have a logic, could be a PHP logic, that tells this computer that after the user has clicked submit, start with picking all the data, sanitize it, make sure that the email is not similar to any other email that is in the database. If it is similar, then display this error. If it is not similar and you have sanitized the concepts, then make sure you put each concept where it goes in the database. That is why you can today go and create a TikTok account. Your data remains saved somewhere on a server that you don't understand or that you don't know. And anytime you lose your phone and go into another phone using the same details, you'll be given your same access to the account. I don't know whether I've tried to explain this, but basically front end is what the user works with. Back end is what me, the developer, who is the server-side code that actually does the data handling, data cleaning, data saving, etc. That is the back end. Back end you don't see, but it is so important because without it, your data won't be saved. Then framework, just a set of tools and libraries that help to build websites faster. These ones we shall discuss later. Then content management systems. We are saying these are tools that allow you to manage website content without coding. People today have embraced this. They do websites without coding. The most common example they use is WordPress. Then we have Joomla. Joomla is also there. For example, HostGator also gives a free building tool that you can use, etc. Then we have Wireframe, and we are saying this is a basic sketch layout of the web page before actual design begins. So here you can draw rectangles for headers, menus, and footers on a paper, basically to help you that when I'm designing, this is what I follow. Yeah, I won't go deep into this. We shall look at them. Then I have a navigation bar or a nav bar, and this is a menu that helps users to move between different pages of the website. Yeah, home, about. For example, when you come here to our website, you're seeing we have menus here for home, for about, services, training, portfolio, contact, etc. These are different menus. Then so this is basically my user interface, what the user basically sees, and this is now the navigation menu. So when I come and I try to inspect, so when I come and I try to inspect, yeah, so you see when I switch to the mobile view, my navigation bar displays into a hamburger menu, or disappears into a hamburger menu, but still it gives me the menu that I can use to navigate through my website. So this is what we mean by responsiveness. You see that the website is becoming not so different from what I'm seeing, and still the user experience and the navigation remains similar almost, even when I've changed. This is now in a tablet view, in mobile view. This one comes back now to tablet view. Tablet view is more or less desktop view. And then lastly, I can close this and go back to my desktop view. So that is what we meant by responsiveness, and this is what we mean by a navigation menu. Then when we come back, we can have a hyperlink, and we are saying this is a clickable link that directs users to another page or a website. Or is the navigation menus must be hyperlinked, that when I click on this, it must take me to another website, another page. When I click on this, it must turn off this and then bring a page for contacts. When I turn off this, it must close this and bring a page for training. However, you should note, I usually tell people when I'm introducing them to websites, that a website is a collection of multiple web pages linked together. So a website, one thing you should note, your website or your web pages should all have similar features that at least link to another page, and also make them look similar, not so distinct. For example, you may choose to use a static header, that the header is similar throughout all the web pages. You may choose to maintain the same colors. You'll be like, the colors are going to be similar throughout all my pages, such that your website remains really very, very similar. These are forms where we say elements used to collect user input, like names, email, and what, these ones, and I'll talk about the cookies a little. We are saying cookies are basically small files stored in the user's browser to remember information. For example, usually this one is so common today that when you're trying to create an account with any website, it will Google, especially if you're using websites like Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, they will ask you, or the browser will ask you, do you want me to save the password and the username, such that anytime you visit that similar website, the browser can automatically autofill your details in the form that you're trying to fill. Then we have the FTP, file transfer protocol, and we are saying this is just a method of transferring files between your computer and the web server. A method of transferring files just between your computer and the web server. Remember, whenever you do hosting, you buy cloud space. This cloud space is on a server somewhere. So when you save your files on that, actually when you save, you'll get a cPanel kind of. You try to get a cPanel kind of. For example, this is a cPanel for Lori CC as my company. It is just a network issue here that is disturbing me. But basically, that is it. When you get that web server, you'll be given a cPanel, or you'll be given a type of screen or a type of access to the server where you can go and upload your data there. So when you go and upload your files there, for example, this is how mine looks like. We can have system info and files. I can come to file manager here, and then I upload my files. So that protocol that you use to transfer files between your computer and the web server is basically the web server. The set of rules that govern that is basically the FTP. And FileZilla is basically a common FTP software that we use so much. Alright, basically those are the terms. The next time we meet, we shall be starting on writing code. Yeah, see you.